A budget is basically just a plan, and the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. How do you work out how much money you need to finance your building project? One of the biggest problems I see with clients is that they hold their budget really close to their chest and they don't tell you how much they've got to spend, thinking that you're going to rip them off. This video is part of a series all about the building process. Today we're going to discuss finance, we're going to talk about making a plan, we're going to talk about sticking to the plan, and we're going to talk about finishing strong. Number one, creating a budget. It can often feel like a chicken and egg scenario. What comes first? Do you get the plans drawn and then work out how much it costs? Or do you work out how much you've got to spend and then get the plans drawn? You'll do this step in hand with your concept design. So part of creating a plan is establishing your brief. If you haven't already, go and watch our video about establishing a brief. Unless you have a clear brief, you're going to be throwing good money down the drain trying to work out what you're actually trying to achieve. Unless you're one of the lucky ones that has a stack of cash on hand, you're going to be like most people I build for, and you're going to need to involve a bank. So talk to your mortgage broker or your bank early on, even jumping on the websites and working out how much can I borrow. Just because you can borrow $1 million doesn't mean you should borrow $1 million. Also have a think about, once the build is complete, what level of debt are you comfortable with? Are you happy to have $1 million loan, and do you understand servicing that loan at 5% interest, at 7% interest? What if interest goes to 9%? So have a think about those kind of scenarios when you think about the build is complete, I've moved in, and now I have a $950,000 loan. Part of the budget is not just to think about the cost of the build, but it's to think about your living costs throughout the build and your living costs after the build. Again, remember, a budget is simply a plan. Where do you plan to get the money? How do you plan to spend the money? How do you plan to pay the money back? It's important to note it's very common for the plan to change or morph as you go along the way. So like once you've got that high level figure, you can then start talking to the designer and the builder, and you can start to get a feel for what you can actually get, and is your brief achievable with your budget. And that might morph. You might change your brief, or you might find a way to increase your budget. And that's okay, that's also part of the journey, but you've got to have a starting point. In my experience, I've always worked out what I'm comfortable to spend before I've gone and seen the designer or the builder. Not only am I going in with a clear brief, but I've got a clear upper limit expectation of what it's going to cost. And that's dictated by income, that's dictated by comfort, that's dictated by how much I've saved. It's also dictated by your other goals in life. If you want to pay off a mortgage or you want to travel, there's no point designing a $2 million home. Having a real high level chat with your mortgage broker or your bank to understand what you can borrow is a very good starting point. We're filming one of these Building Explained videos every week for the next 20 weeks, and they'll be in this playlist here. Part 2, it's time to stick to the plan. So you go to the designer and the builder with your brief and your budget, and you're really clear up front. One of the biggest problems I see with clients is that they hold their budget really close to their chest and they don't tell you how much they've got to spend, thinking that you're going to rip them off. Essentially what happens though is you compromise your dream, or you make that process really difficult. So by being honest with your designer, being honest with your builder, and not being embarrassed. If you've only got $200,000, just say, only $200,000. I know that's a lot of money, but we're talking about building in New Zealand. Hey, I've only got 200K, this is what I want to do. Is that achievable? Have those real honest chats. It'll save everyone a lot of time, and it'll save you money in the long run by getting it right the first time round. Again, you don't want to design a $1 million home when you've only got 500K to spend. It sounds real simple, but you would be surprised how often I look at a plan and I say, that is an awesome house and it's going to cost this much, and then it all gets scrapped and we redesign it. So if you work out your budget before you go into the next stages of design and quoting and getting all these people to do your work for you, number one, you can finish your project faster. Number two, it's a smoother process for everyone. Number three, it's more enjoyable and less stressful for you and the people involved. A great example of a client that was really open and honest about their budget from day one is Jeff at the Crest Road section. Jeff came in and had a firm upper limit budget, and so he said, I don't want to spend any more than this. This is what I'd like to achieve. This is how much I'd like to spend. And so as he asked us to design his home, he'd show us pictures from Pinterest. I want these windows. And I'd say, well, Jeff, we can do that, but it's going to cost 20K. He'd say, well, how does that affect the overall build price? Well, it's going to push you 18K over your budget. And he said, okay, we won't do that. Is there another way to achieve that look? Instead of doing 3 slitted windows, we did 1 big giant window with a beam over it. So we achieved the same look in that space, but we did it for a quarter of the price. Over and over, we made a number of decisions like that with Jeff. Because he had a clear brief and because he was willing to make clear-cut decisions, his build came in on budget and he was wrapped with the house. We have handed over multiple houses on time, on budget. Hey, you know what costs you nothing? Go ahead, click subscribe, help us continue to grow, show your support. So no one wants to start a building project only to see it sit there dwindling for years. You've all driven past one of those projects in your town and you've wondered what the heck happened. You don't want that to be you. You want to start a project and you want to finish it strong. It's highly likely you're going to want to buy some new furniture. You're going to want to finish the outside of the building just as much as the inside. I'm telling you, that stuff adds up, and it's a lot of unexpected things. You want to hold some money in your back pocket. Can you see my back pocket? Hold some money in your back pocket for a rainy day. So for example, if the bank says you can borrow 500K, don't go and spend 500K on the raw structure of your build. Allow for things like appliances and furniture and plants. Allow to get it all the way through. Have a backup, have a reserve. People would say have 5 to 10%. Honestly, it'll make the process way less stressful for you. If you know that you can borrow or spend 500K, tell your builder and your designer that you want the build to cost 450 to 475. Hold that 5 to 10% up your sleeve. You don't want to be scrambling right at the last minute, going back to the bank and saying, hey, I've gone over, I need another 50K. We've seen it on Grand Designs, right? Projects get stalled for years. Insert Grand Designs clip here somewhere.
This one's ground to a halt because of miscommunication and because of miscalculation.
And often it's because the cost blew out so much at the start because they were over optimistic. The last thing you wanted to be doing is working like a slave 24/7, doing all this work and it dragging out for years to come because you didn't leave enough in reserve to finish it strong. Bonus tip, I always say to my clients, we can do whatever you want, whenever you want, it just depends how much you want to spend. But the more stuff you can work out early, the more you do that early on before any action happens on site, the less it's going to cost you. We can change a house whenever you want. I mean, essentially that's what a renovation is, but it costs you more and more the further down the track you do it. And not only does that cost you money, but that delays you in terms of completing your build. And delays will prevent you from getting code of compliance, which prevents you from locking in that final interest rate and moving into a fixed mortgage with your bank. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Moving into your house, having some security about how much it costs. Basically, you just want peace of mind. It is possible to build a house on time and on budget, but it takes a collaboration between the client, the builder, the designer, and the finance. All of those people need to work together to know what the other people need. The designer wants to design something they're proud of. The builder wants to take pride in their work. You want to enjoy the home you're living in, and the bank wants to make sure that you're not overcapitalizing on something that's not going to have a residual value at the end. There's definitely not enough money to build a house, but I do have enough money for a pie and a coffee. I'm off.